The Bothy Storytelling Podcast is a member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And welcome to another episode of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Callum Lycan. Well, gosh, we've hit a bit of a roadblock with the podcast, and if you've been following me on our Facebook page or even on our Instagram feed, you may have noticed I've been posting a few distressed looks or pacing videos, simply because I've really hit a kind of creative block. Every time I sit down and try and record, I just get it wrong. Nothing works for me. And a friend gave me some advice. He said, just sit down and talk. Just start talking and see what happens. So that's what this episode is about. This episode is about just trying to overcome that creative roadblock simply by talking into this microphone. You know, it's not stage fright. It's not, the nerves or anything along those lines. It really is just every time I've sat down or stood up, depending on what I'm recording, I kind of start the story and then I'm coughing and spluttering, or I feel my throat going wrong and just the words all get jumbled and messed up. So it's a kind of weird experience because I've been doing storytelling now for about 6 odd years professionally, and I'm developing it and progressing it, and this podcast is another facet of it, and I'm looking at Canada and wondering how to take it further. And one of the avenues I'm actually looking at is the storytelling may have to take a small sidestep, and public speaking and motivational talks and keynote speaking might be somewhere that I step into. I was at TED Talk YYC, TEDx YYC actually, just at the weekend there, and it was a phenomenal experience to watch these speakers out there. Now, I don't know how many of them were professional and how many had been trained for the event. I kind of think there was a mix of both. But it was absolutely amazing to see these people just get up, and you could tell the ones that were nervous and their body language was a wee bit off, and maybe they stuttered and fumbled, but it was so human and so wonderful to watch. And then, of course, you saw the ones that were completely professional and really knew how to work the crowd. It was just quite inspiring to see the TEDx YYC groups working. And it's a kind of dream of mine to actually get up there and do a TED Talk. I don't know what I'd do it about. I've kind of banding and throwing a few ideas about in my head, and I really need to carry a recorder about, because every time I get this great idea or a little phrase or a little kind of paragraph of text flows through my head that would really be quite cool, I always forget it by the time I get home because I never record it. So, note to myself and note to all the listeners, carry a little recorder about, because that would actually be a great way to get over creative roadblock. Because if you're throwing out these ideas and you catch them, maybe, you're driving down the road, that's when I get a lot of mine. Or I'm out for a walk, I often get them then. And it's like, if I just had something to record with, it would probably make life a lot easier. And there's one immediate kind of hurdle for roadblock, I suppose. This is probably why, my good friend Mr. Dargay suggested that I just talk into the microphone, because frankly, it's just to get over this roadblock, just chat and talk and ramble. But how do you get over these sort of roadblocks? I wonder how other artists do it, because, and crafters, because it's going to happen to us all. I've lived a very simple philosophy of my storytelling, that you just keep up, get going and keep going. But for a whole week, I've tried and it failed miserably. The worst bit is actually a story that I know really well, that I tell all the time, and it's actually going to be on one of my future Viking series. And a part of me was wondering if maybe I've overtold it lately and it's just lost that kind of passion and interest for me, because that can happen as well when you overdo something, when you constantly repeat yourself. And I never tell the story the same way, more than once anyway. I don't strictly rehearse my stories word for word, but it's kind of weird because when that sort of thing happens, I wonder if that could be a kind of roadblock as well. You're telling it too many times, even though it's not the same story, or should I say not told the same way. It might just lose that passion for you. And that would be fascinating for me to kind of discover and work out a wee bit more about as well. Because I was trying to tell this story. And you've probably heard it, because I'm actually now, I'm not lying, I'm kind of trying to record later episodes than the one that should already be out, simply just to try and get over this wee hurdle. But you'll have probably heard it if I managed to record it properly, unless I changed it. But the one I was going to tell you was Thor loses his hammer. It's on another Viking episode. And I love the story. I mean, it's just such a beautiful tale. It's lovely. It's got so much fun and energy in it. And oh God, could I get it out? No, couldn't. It was a nightmare. It just kept just going so wrong for me all the time. And I was screaming and roaring, and I was just miserable. And then the cats were playing. I don't know if anyone's got cats out there. I've discovered that cats are the bane of any performer's life. If you're trying to record anything quietly, all of a sudden, the thundering of feet as they charge down the hall, the howling and meowing as they have play fighting rolling about at you. Or even what's worse, we have a beautiful little tabby. She's gorgeous, but she's so needy. Una is the neediest cat I've ever met, and I will literally be working here and then I will hear this god-awful, mournful cry like the end of the world is about to happen, and I look down and there's this beautiful little face looking up at me, looking for pampers and hugs and play, and it's just like, yeah, you're so beautiful, Una, but I need to work. I just go away. Please leave me alone. And I found myself roaring and bellowing at the cats in the last week. So it's been an interesting kind of period of time, and I've really just if I had hair I'd have pulled it out, folks. It's been a challenge. And then I kept looking back at the episodes and trying to find a story to fit in the episodes, and maybe just a different concept. I mean, I've got an idea for some of the up and coming episodes. I'm actually doing the Storytellers of Canada conference soon, and I'm doing a workshop on introduction to storytelling. Now, I promised you when I started this podcast I would try and cover aspects of storytelling. Quite a lot of the episodes of late have just been me rambling and telling stories. I'm sorry, the ego has landed. But I realised that this would be a great way to kind of semi-rehearse my workshop. Not give you the full workshop, but a few of the stages of it, just to help me make sure it sounds right. So the next couple of episodes might actually include some of that workshop kind of extracts, especially the beginning stage, because a lot of people always ask me, how do you start in storytelling? And I've told my story about me in the early days, but there's a lot more to storytelling than just that little story. There's a whole complex thing, but I'm not going to go into that in this episode because I could get carried away straight away, and next thing we know, we're doing a 5-hour workshop. No, that's not going to work on this episode. This is the ramble episode. This is hopefully getting me over those creative roadblocks and getting me back into just speaking into this mic. I've done so many different things. We're in the process of looking at building a proper home studio. I've got this kind of self-made, bungled together one, and you'll probably hear that the quality of this recording is slightly different from the other ones, and that's because I've actually had to readjust it. The other one I was working in, the temporary kind of one, which this still is, I had made so small and it was so dingy and dark, and I just thought, this is not working. I kept banging into things and it just felt so constricting and I just couldn't work in it. So last night I actually tore it down and rebuilt it. So it's a lot more open, it's wider, it's slightly bigger. It's almost closer to the size of what I will have. Obviously I've still got a huge big desk in here which needs to go. But it just feels a lot better being in here working already. It just feels more relaxed and I feel more open, but I'm thinking I've probably got too much sound bleed, so you're probably going to be hearing not as clear a sound recording as I like to give yous. But I built it, I redesigned it, I kind of opened it up and it feels so much better already. So in the next couple of months, because I kind of am really busy, I mean, let's be honest, at the end of this week I'm off to Peterborough, and guess what Mumpty decided to drive? Yep, this Muppet said he is going to drive across to Peterborough in the East Coast just to see Canada. Whoa, go me. And I get back from that, and then I've got to be honest, I've got a lot of work to do, you know. I want to make sure this workshop's good, so that's what this week is all about, recording and that workshop. And then when I get back, I've got to start writing a paper, because I've left everything to the last minute. This is typical Callum. I need to write a paper about the Skaldic traditions in the Viking Age, because this is for something that I'm trying to do with the Vikings. I'm trying to progress up to the performance Thane, which is a nice level. I mean, it's not a level of authority or power or anything. I'm not interested in that. But it gives me this lovely standing where I can actually guide and help people in performance aspects of the Viking system. And then, of course, I also need to build a new puppet for Edmonton Fringe. Now, excuse me, I'm just going to grab my coffee. Yeah, guys, you're never going to guess where I got this coffee from. As I've discovered in many episodes, I seem to be a promoter of Starbucks. I'm drinking a cold foam cappuccino with vanilla in the foam and vanilla in the coffee. It's lovely. Really got to stop promoting Starbucks. They're never going to pay me. But yeah, so I've got a puppet kind of booth. I did a while back for Okotoks. They had a Halloween wizard and witches theme, so I designed this little booth that I had in Scotland. The first one was a Highlander, the world's smallest Highlander, and this one was the world's smallest wizard. But the Edmonton Fringe have got this amazing theme called Fringosaurus Rex, and they've asked if I could bring this puppet along. But I call it a puppet booth. It's not really. It's a photo booth which you step into, but I build a kind of puppet figurine for it to make it work. And it's really cool. You basically put your head and your hands through and you become the world's tiniest. But this one's complicated. Fringosaurus Rex. I mean, do I make a sexy Jeff Goldblum figure? I don't know if that would work. Do I make a hunting kind of like figure, in the tan stuff, the guy, oh, you clever girl, that chap. I don't think that'll work. So I've decided how to really challenge myself. I am going to make a dinosaur, and I've got to design it in such a way that your head actually works and goes in it. But you can't just be a human head on a dinosaur. That wouldn't work. I've got to figure out a way to make this really work and be really cool for people. So I've got that to build, and really that only gives me a couple of weeks in between getting back from this conference to heading off to Gimli, which is over in Manitoba, to getting back, and then I've got a week, and then I'm out at Edmonton Fringe. So I have got so much to do, and I would love to get this booth done, because oh my goodness, you know what I could do with a proper professional booth? Sealing myself off from the world and just being in this lovely soundproof zone where I can actually do really, really professional stuff. Yeah, I know I'm kidding myself. It'll still be the same relaxed Callum, just gibbering away into a microphone. But basically, this is my idea. I'm going to build this beautiful sound booth and actually be able to do stuff. And that will hopefully open up voiceover work. Not voice acting. I don't want to do, I'm not very good at accents and stuff like that. I think I can only do a Monty Python English accent at best. But it will help me with voiceover work, hopefully. And it will allow me to record some professional videos and audio clips for all my channels. And it'll just, I hope, up my game. And it will give me a reason to up my game. It'll also allow me to invite people to my home, to the sound booth, to do some proper interviews. Because you may have noticed I haven't really put any interviews on the channel for a while. The reason for that is basically they're all really rough and difficult to do. I love my conversational interviews, but the problem is they're so noisy with all the background pub noise and that, and it's not really worked. So I may need to re-interview a couple of the people by inviting them to my home, giving them coffee and cake, etc., trying to be a nice hostess. Yes, I did say that. And, put my wee penny on and all that, and just be that lovely person. But I just need to get this booth built, and it's driving me insane, and I think that's what's niggling me, folks. We've been planning it for a few months. We know exactly what we're going to do. There's still a wee bit of planning left. I've pulled stuff off the internet. I know kind of all the ins and outs. It's not going to be 100% soundproof because we can't do certain things, but it's still going to be an amazing booth and a massive upgrade to what I'm working in. And I just want it, and I think it's really, really throwing me off. I mean, it means I'll be able to even do CD quality work, everything in here, so I can start producing so much of my own stuff. And it's going to be an amazing thing, but it's a while away, and I just hate that. I just want it done. I just want my booth so I can really get down to working. But you know what? It'll come. More coffee. Yep. More coffee is needed. But that's kind of like the gist of things. In this episode, I say it's a ramble. I'm sorry if you were looking for some insightful storytelling, but you know what? Sometimes just talking, sometimes just rambling. I'm kind of already going, hey, this feels okay, this feels nice. I know this is going to be a really dull episode for everyone. Just what the hell is he talking about? What was going on? Why is he just rambling into the microphone? But I like it. One of my favourite podcasts, and this isn't my podcast recommendation for the month, I won't say that, but one of my favourite podcasts is actually Bill Burr. His Monday Musings, Ramblings, can't remember quite the name of it. I just know it's Bill Burr's podcast. And all he does is talk and ramble about stuff that's gone on, and occasionally throws in some of the football and baseball and basketball stuff. And I just love it because it's so natural and it's him just being him. And every so often his wife or kid come in. So it kind of just makes it a really human podcast, and I thoroughly enjoy that, and that's kind of what I really want to aim for, just to make this just random. Like if my partner walks in, she just has to accept that she's part of this podcast. If one of my housemates walks in, hey, they're just going to have to go with it. I've kicked the cats out again because they're just too noisy, and let's be honest, when they start talking, they don't make any sense. I mean, really, have you ever listened to a cat? They talk about random stuff. It's just weird. They just they're not very sensible animals. Generally catnip and stuff like that, and how this one bit my tail. It's a weird thing. Anyway, I'm really going off the track. What is in this coffee? It's tremendous. Gosh, I really am rambling this one. This is good. This is nice. It's nice to actually be talking into a microphone, folks. It really is. After a week of just wanting to proverbially pull my hair out, it's actually nice to be able to talk. I've no idea what story I'm going to throw into this episode. I'm just telling you that now. This is a completely improvised and random episode, but with that in mind, let's just take a minute to hear from one of our sponsors. Got to do all that lovely stuff. So, what will we do this one? Let me just see. What did I do the last one? Gosh, that shows you. Okay. If you're starting or building a business, ATB's Entrepreneur Centre is a great place to go. Of course, they can help with your banking, but they also offer workshops and networking opportunities. They can also help you get set up with a mentor. Learn more at atb.com/entrepreneur centre. That's atb.com/entrepreneur centre. And this is a place that I have gone to. I'm actually going there on Wednesday to hear a wonderful workshop from a friend of mine. He's doing a workshop in the morning. I cannot remember the name of it, and by the time this goes out, it's probably too late for you guys. But I highly recommend the Entrepreneur Centre if you are starting or building a business. They are great people, great workshops. I've not used their mentoring system. To be honest, I'm not sure if they'd be able to help me. I have this wonderful thing when I go up and speak to people, and they ask me, certainly in the business community, when I go to all these workshop events and networking events, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm actually a storyteller. And I think I've told you this before, but they kind of look, and you see that weird kind of look, and you almost see a nervous tick because they've no idea how to process what I've just said, and then they're desperately looking for someone to run away to. So I get that all the time, but I still go to all these workshops and events because I love it. And as I say, the TED event I was at recently was a great networking opportunity, and I really harassed the guys that organised it. They're going to hate me. I was like, I want to host next year. I'd love to do a TED Talk, but let me host. Let me host your event. Come on, I'm the guy to host. And they were just laughing at me. But hey, the thought's there now. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I can get to host a TED Talk, because that would be amazing to be the host, holding that together, blending all those talkers together and just making that a memorable evening for everyone. That to me would be phenomenal. But now, folks, I've rambled enough. I've gibbered. I've pontificated. Is that a word? I think it could be. We'll look that one up after, and if I've got that wrong, I shall apologise in the next episode. But let's try and find a story now for you guys to listen to. Now, as I said, creative roadblocks, and I have no idea kind of what story to tell you. So I've just had a look through some of the stories that I've told in the past and just kind of going with a familiar tale, just again to help me get over this kind of hump that I've got of not being able to get this done. And let's go for a kind of loosely themed roadblock story. Yeah, you might see what I'm going to do here, folks. But this is actually an old ghost story from Edinburgh, and it's a very old, ancient one, and it's a beautiful one, and it starts up at Edinburgh Castle. You see, Edinburgh Castle has always been a military garrison. It's always been a place where the army has been. Now, once upon a time, they were actually building down in the dungeons. They were knocking down walls. They were kind of adjusting it, making it bigger. When all of a sudden the soldiers that were working there, they knocked down a wall to discover a tunnel. A tunnel leading away into the darkness, down from the castle. And it looked like it headed down what we call the Royal Mile, heading towards the royal residence. Now, there has always been rumours of underground cities and passageways in Edinburgh, so the soldiers are aware of this. But the problem is, this is a security risk. If this tunnel goes to the royal residence, is there any accesses anywhere else to it? And the soldiers stare down the tunnel knowing that they need to investigate. But there is one problem. The tunnel is rather small and narrow, so these big burly soldiers know that they're never going to fit. So they stand there, puzzled, confused, staring down into the darkness. But Edinburgh's a strange city. It's a city that always provides when it's needed. Just at that moment in time, up in the esplanade, there was a young boy. He was watching all the ladies and gentlemen walking around in this midday sun. They were enjoying the heat on their bodies and just enjoying the stroll in the fresh air. And there he stood, leaning against the wall, watching. He was watching for something in particular. He was watching for a bulge of a pocket watch or a pocket book sticking out. And as he stood there, the minutes ticked by and all of a sudden he saw what he was after. A gentleman walked by and his pocket book was hanging out of his pocket. And the young boy knew this was his opportunity. He starts to follow the man. He starts to match his pace, making sure that he's not noticed, getting closer and closer to the man, reaching out, ready to snatch the pocketbook when all of a sudden a vice-like grip catches his wrist. He looks up into the eyes of one of the soldiers that had been watching him all along. And now the young boy's in trouble. He's dragged into the castle, through the grounds, down into the dark, damp dungeons and thrown into one of the cells. And the guard looks at him and says, "You'll stay there all weekend, where you'll go in front of the judge on Monday and it'll probably be the rope for your neck." Now this lad, he's a wee slip of a thing, just a young kid. So he's now sitting in a dank, dark, vile dungeon knowing that his days are numbered. But all the while, the soldiers that had been looking down this hole had watched this commotion, and an idea came to them. So they approached the young lad, and they made him a deal. He had two options. Sit in this cell, rot away until Monday, go in front of the judge, and it'll probably be the rope for you. You'll hang until you're dead. Or, we can forget everything if you take one of these flaming torches and head down this dark tunnel and tell us where it goes. Well, the young boy liked neither option, but certainly the latter seemed far more appealing than dangling from a rope. So he agrees to go down the dark tunnel. The soldiers release him, give him a torch, and are about to send him into the darkness when it dawns on them. How are we going to know where he is? Well, one of them instantly comes up with an idea, says, "Wait a minute," and disappears. A couple of minutes later, returning with a wee drum. It was obvious. You head into the darkness, laddie. Every so often just stop and tap on the drum. We'll know where you are. And the boy heads into the darkness. And the soldiers watch the light disappearing. And every so often they hear the dum, 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 dum of his drum. Into the darkness he goes until the light fades and disappears, but still coming down the tunnel, dum, 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 dum. The soldiers realise he must be under the esplanade, so they run up to the esplanade and walk, listening, and sure enough, from under their feet, dum, 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 dum. They follow the drum across the esplanade, dum, dum, dum. They follow it down Castle Hill, dum, dum, dum. On to the Royal Mile by St Giles Cathedral, and still they hear the little drum beat. They cannot believe how far this tunnel's going. Down the Royal Mile, and still dum, 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 until they get to the crossroads at the Tron Kirk, and silence. They hear nothing. They wait for a few seconds, but still nothing. They slowly backtrack. Nothing. They go back to where they last heard the drum. Maybe the tunnel had turned. Nothing. They spread out across the Royal Mile, listening. And still silence. Up and down the closes, through the weaving and winding passageways they travel, desperately listening for the drum beat, but the minutes tick into hours, and the hours start to tick by, and the soldiers start to worry, and still they hear nothing. Up and down the mile they travel, hoping to hear that faint drum beat, but nothing. And as the sun slowly starts to set, the soldiers realise there's only one option left. With heads hanging low, they walk up the Royal Mile. They head into the castle. Into the storerooms they gather brick and mortar. Down into the dungeons they go, where they slowly start to brick up that tunnel, brick by brick by brick, forever trapping the little drummer boy in the dark underground of Edinburgh forever. But if you ever go to Edinburgh, you might be fortunate, maybe on a dark night where the moon is high. You might be walking down the Royal Mile late, the cars might be still. And if you're really fortunate, you might hit the crossroads, roughly at the Tron Kirk. And if you're standing waiting, you might be fortunate enough just to hear a wee dum, 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 dum from under your feet, because it's said that to this very day the little drummer boy is still trying to find his way out of the darkness of that underground tunnel. The Little Drummer Boy is a beautiful and old story from Edinburgh, and it's based around a true account. I actually used to work in the underground city of Edinburgh doing ghost tours, and many of my customers would actually say that they would hear a faint drumming coming from one of the walls. So there is a lot of lore about the Little Drummer Boy, but the reality is there's also a little bit of kind of like change to the story. One account says it was a piper, one account says it was a horse-drawn carriage. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on there. But I love Edinburgh. I love it, all its ghost stories and its underground city. I actually remember one of my most memorable accounts of being down there was telling that story in the darkness. Because the underground city is pitch black and we would just take people around with candles. And I remember standing with just a candle lighting me, telling that story, and all of a sudden a woman starts to scream and freak out because she swears she's hearing a drumming coming from behind her. Now, I'll tell you, see, when someone freaks out in the darkness, that's it, game over. The whole place goes to hell, and everybody wanted out of that dark underground city. It was a very short tour, but everyone enjoyed it nonetheless. But the Little Drummer Boy, great wee story from Edinburgh. But another word from one of our sponsors. The Rotary Club of Edmonton West, on behalf of its entire district, invites you to dream, connect and inspire at the District 5370 Conference in October. A number of stellar speakers, both local and international, are sharing their stories at this conference. Among them is Mitty Chang, a web designer and consultant who started his entrepreneurial journey when he built his first website in 1998, when he was in grade 4. He started his first business in high school and is now senior project manager and partner at Candiver, a Californian-based marketing firm. The conference is open to the general public. It will also attract Rotarians from all over Western Canada and the world, which means you'll be in a room with some of the kindest and most community-minded people around. So come to Shaw Conference Centre in Edmonton from October the 18th to the 20th. Learn more at conference5370-2018.ca. That's conference5370-2018.ca. Now, as this episode is about me just rambling, it crossed my mind there that did I do the Little Drummer Boy on the Back Alley Tales episodes when I recorded it in Shelf Life Books? Well, if I did, folks, I do apologise for repeating a story. But as I said, this is about just getting over that hurdle and getting back on the saddle. I suppose I'm in Alberta, I should use some cowboy terms, and just getting back into things here. So if I have repeated that tale, my sincere apologies, ladies and gents, but I hope you still enjoyed it. However, it's time to move on, and you know what? I think it's time for my book recommendation. Now, the Bothy Storytelling Podcast does work with Audible, and you can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Bothy podcast. As you know, they've got over about 180,000 titles for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. And my recommendation for Creative Roadblock, I've just had a look at some of the books they've got, and you know what? I'm going to go with this one. Get It Done by Sam Bennett. This is all about from procrastination to creative genius in 15 minutes a day. And I think we could all do with something like that, especially if you are running into brick walls like I've been in the last few weeks. But Get It Done. It's written by Sam Bennett. It's narrated by Sam Bennett. It is $23.48, and you're looking at about 6 hours, 25 minutes of audiobook, which of course, if you take up the 30-day free trial, you can actually get for free under your audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/Bothy podcast. So, Get It Done by Sam Bennett, from procrastination to creative genius in 15 minutes a day. Have a look at it, folks, and pick up that under the free Audible trial. And for avid listeners, you know exactly what's coming up after my book recommendation. It is my podcast recommendation. And as we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB, let us give you another one of the great podcasts that are available on that network. And I'm thinking I'm going to go with Work Not Work this show. Work Not Work show is Terence C. Gannon interviews people who have turned their passion into their profession. Exactly the sort of thing that I love to hear about. This is what I did with my life. I took a passion and I turned it into a business and a career. And there's people out there doing the same thing, and I'm pretty sure there's listeners who are wanting to do the same. So get on to the Work Not Work show. Terence C. Gannon interviews people who have turned their passion into their profession. A fantastic show on the Alberta Podcast Network, and I would highly recommend it. The Work Not Work show. And as we come to the end of another Bothy Storytelling Podcast show, I'm going to actually thank you all for just listening to my rambles and helping me hopefully get over these creative roadblocks of the last week or so. I appreciate my listeners being out there, and you know what? I want some feedback because I have no idea if people are actually enjoying this show or not. So do get in touch with me at the email address, which you know what? I have completely forgotten. I'm just going to grab something here and... Yeah, I'm actually doing this, folks. I'm looking up my email address because I have forgotten which one I use for the Bothy. I'm pretty sure it's bothytales@gmail.com, but let me just double check that for you because that would just be typically hilarious. Yeah, get in touch with me at bothytales@gmail.com. That's BOTHYTALES@gmail.com. Bothytales@gmail.com. Give me some feedback. Give me some pointers. If you think I'm doing okay, if you've got any suggestions for a great show theme that you would love to hear, get in touch with me because you know what? It would just be great to give you guys more of what you want, and also to find out if you're thoroughly enjoying this show or if my rambles are just confusing the living hell out of you, which, hey, I can totally go with. Because you know what? Rambles are good. Confusion is good. Living hell, not so good. But get in touch with me at thebothytales@gmail.com. Tell me how you're doing. And do, guys, bear in mind, we also have our Patreon page. So if you want to support this podcast, help me develop it. Hey, guys, I'm about to build a home studio. Help me fund that goddamn thing a wee bit. That would be lovely. I've been reading a lot of books. I've actually been reading Amanda Palmer's The Art of Asking again. I love that book. I kind of did a recommendation for it earlier in one of my podcasts. But I do love that book because she's so honest and she just like has this amazing connection with her audience. And I want to build that. I really want to take a leaf out of her page and actually build that connection, that really intimate, friendly connection with you guys. So do get in touch. Do send me an email. Hopefully all positive. If it is negative, hey, go for it, guys. I'm going to have to take the rough with the smooth. It's part of doing all this stuff. But I want to create that bond with you. If you have anything you want to ask, if you want to recommend or suggest anything for a show theme, please do just get in touch. But also we have the Patreon page. And that's designed there to allow you to help me out a wee bit more, help me develop and grow this podcast. And certainly if you became a patron of the podcast, you're basically, all I'm asking for is a minimum of $5. That's all you need to do. I may even just reduce that again and just make it give what you want, pay what you want, because that just feels a wee bit more fair rather than putting a set amount on. But I think Patreon's a bit funny and you need to have a set amount. But certainly, do have a look at it. Have a look at the Patreon page. It is simply the Bothy Storytelling Podcast on Patreon. And you can become a member of this great community that's growing. I have so many downloads happening now, so something must be going well. And I'm loving doing this, even though I have had a bit of a, brick wall banging my head off session. But you guys have been here for this one, and you've sat through potentially over half an hour of me just rambling. So I really love that, and I want to thank you for doing that and helping me kind of get back on this, because I love doing it. I love doing storytelling. I love doing public speaking. I love doing what I do. And it is a challenge out here in Canada, I'm not going to lie. This isn't easy street. Scotland wasn't easy street, but I had outlets. I could do walking tours. I could do so much more to bring in an income and support myself. Well, in Canada, it's a little bit more challenging because I'm the new boy on the block, and I'm also not able to do as many of the things that I would normally do. Mainly the vastness of Canada, but also, no offence to the Canadians, they appreciate this as well when I say it. They are lacking a wee bit of the history to be able to work, say, walking tours and that into it, because it's a different culture, it's a different style. And certainly Calgary's Cowtown, as they call it, it's an oil and gas town. It's not really based around the arts. The art scene in Calgary is very small. It's growing, but it is still a tiny wee community. So anything that my listeners can do to help me grow and develop and spread the word out there, I would be delighted. Even if it is just spreading the word, folks. Just tell people about this. Tell people about me. Tell people that I'm out there doing my thing and trying to make this world a better, happier place through story, through mentoring, through motivational talks. Just let the word be known. And I would appreciate that as much as I appreciate you listening to my 30-odd minute ramble of complete nonsense. But I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. Have a look at our Facebook page, have a look at our Patreon page, have a look at my website, callumlycanstorytelling.com. See what I'm doing, see what's happening, and just support me in any way you can. Email me. Let's start a chat. I would love to chat to some of you guys out there and get your thoughts and just connect with you on a different level than me just speaking out of this microphone. But thank you very much for listening. And I hope to hear yous all, see yous all, and talk to yous all on the next episode of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast.